Hiya, welcome to Inside Property Development. I'm Paul Higgs, and if you've been here before, you will know that most weeks we're speaking to and interviewing industry experts and other people that are generally interested in helping get more good quality housing and commercial space built the right way. And then on top of that, every few weeks, I'm going to be answering questions that you send in around the key areas of land planning and property development. So that's finance stuff, building, design, and in particular planning, which is the real big one. And that's what I'm going to be talking about this week. So, questions that people have sent in. Firstly, what do you think that many developers are missing when it comes to planning? So now obviously when it comes to property development, there's a whole range of developers, from people just starting out to the biggest developers in the country that are very, very experienced. But most people, other than the very experienced, tend to misunderstand things, not do things the best way, and therefore not get the best results. Now, having said that, things are really, really difficult at the moment, but more difficult than they've ever been, certainly in my career. So, it's not easy, even when you do know what you're doing. But when you don't know what you're doing and you do things the wrong way, then you really are asking for trouble. So the thing that most developers, I think, sort of miss or perhaps don't quite understand is that, hopefully, we should be working in collaboration with local authorities, planning departments. Yeah. Now, I know that's hard to do, and it doesn't seem like that's the way it is a lot of the time, largely because, local authorities are under massive pressure themselves and are severely under-resourced. So getting anything done, and getting responses, and it's really important for us, obviously, to get quick responses, because at the end of the day, time is money. We have agreements with landowners that typically are only for a certain period of time. Those agreements run out, and then you haven't got a deal anymore. So we, as developers, end up under massive time and financial pressure, of course, because submitting planning applications is not a cheap thing. So the whole way things tend to end up is a little bit confrontational, because we're under massive pressure as developers. Local authority planning officers are also actually under massive pressure because there's not enough of them, and they're overworked. So a lot of developers, I think, certainly I used to miss that point and just get focused on the fact that I'm running out of time, I'm running out of money. If I don't get this permission thing, it's going to cost me a fortune. So, it's easy to forget the fact that we really should be trying to work together to collaborate. And as I said, I appreciate that isn't always easy, because sometimes, you don't get, local authorities either can't or won't or don't want to collaborate. Quite often that might be because they come under pressure from people locally that don't want any development, and of course planning officers come under pressure from their own planning committees that might end up not really wanting any development because they're under pressure from the electorate. So it's a real tricky situation. So I think one of the things that many developers miss is just how difficult it is actually for the planning department as well as it is for us. So that sort of leads me onto some of the next questions, really, including what's your number one piece of advice when it comes to getting planning approved? And the answer to that is we need to make things as easy as humanly possible for local authority planners and for planning departments. And the way we do that is to effectively, as far as possible, do their job for them. So, and the way we do that, we need to understand planning and planning policy inside out. As a really skilled, successful developer, we need to know that stuff ourselves, but we also need to work with the very best professional teams. So that obviously means planning consultants and of course architects. But even so, the very best developers, they know this stuff themselves, because you can't be reliant as a developer just on your architect or planning consultant, because there's a lot of competing things that have to be considered: finance, build, landowners, land values, as I've mentioned before and we've discussed previously. So ultimately, we as a developer need to know this stuff, but we do need the very, very best professional teams. And then what needs to happen in conjunction with your professional team, when you're putting together a scheme, you need to analyse all of the site constraints, the technical constraints, the legal constraints, and of course the planning constraints and the planning policies inside out, and then reverse engineer what needs to happen and what needs to be designed in order to tick all of those boxes. Okay, and then when we submit our planning applications, basically, any and every single thing that may get raised as an issue or an objection, we need to deal with that up front at the planning application stage. That way, we are making things as quick and as easy as they could be for us by addressing things before they potentially become problems at a later date. And now what we're also doing there, of course, when we do things that way, is we're making the planners' jobs easy, because remember, we all know that they are under serious pressure because they've got too much to do as well. We're making their jobs as easy as humanly possible by we're effectively doing their job for them, answering all of the questions that are going to be asked of them at various stages. Are questions asked by other people that live locally, and of course asked by the planning committees that they're effectively answerable to. So any and every question that's going to be asked by anyone, we need to address at the planning application stage, so it doesn't become a big problem that we have to deal with at the last minute. Now, obviously, that is not easy, but it is the way to do it. The alternative is, you don't deal with things properly, you don't address them properly, and then it becomes a big problem further down the line anyway, and then ends up actually costing everyone more time, money, and grief. So this stuff's all got to be dealt with anyway. You might as well deal with it properly right at the very beginning. That is the key to getting planning approved. So I say not always easy, but that is the answer. Okay, which leads me on to the next question, like in terms of how do you deal with that? So the question here is like, how come there are so many conflicting policies? So, well, the answer to that, well, let's break this down a little bit more. So obviously you've got planning policy. Well, you've got local planning policy. So you've got the development plan of the local authority that you're dealing with, and then of course you've got central government policy, law, legislation, and the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework. And then of course you get decisions being made. So you end up with case law. So it can be very difficult to know. Well, actually, what is it that I should be following? Yeah. Now, to a large extent, that's where your professionals come in handy, particularly obviously planners and even planning counsel, barristers, when things start getting a little bit bigger and more complicated. Yeah. But I suppose the main reason there are so many conflicting policies is because land planning, development in general is a really big, complex subject, and there are a lot of different things to be addressed, and actually to a large extent that is part of the problem, because as well as local authorities, then you've got the statutory consultees, you've got the Environment Agency, you've got Historic England, you've got Highways Agency, you might have a county planning authority in some areas. If you're in London, you'll have the GLA as well as your local borough, wherever you're working. So there's a lot of different people involved as well. And they are very often, they're not talking to each other. It's not really very joined up with those people. They're just looking in their own sort of little boxes about, well, we need this, we need that. And they're not really looking at the bigger picture. It's only really us at the coalface as developers on the front line that have to sort of like juggle everything and work out, well, how can we fit it all together? And again, that's one of the reasons, I wanted to start talking about, well, what really goes on inside property development, because that way, the more all the people involved at various parts of the industry actually understand that and can see things from other people's points of view and how things all fit together, hopefully, the better we can all start working together to get things done, in a quicker, faster, cheaper, smoother, easier way, and get better stuff created as a result, rather than wasting resources fighting about stuff. Yeah. So the reason there are so many conflicting policies is because there just are, right? There's a lot of different people involved that want to sort of, look after their own interests or their own little bit of, areas of expertise that they're dealing with. Now, and then in fact, one of the real skills is for both local authority planners and for us as developers is, how do you balance those conflicting policies and how much weight do you apply to each? Now, and really not easy as a developer, because of course, the answer to that question, which tends to be sometimes subjective, definitely always a little bit of a grey area. It's definitely not black and white. There isn't always, rarely, a definite answer. And ultimately, again, as developers, we need to, I don't want to say gamble, because personally, I'm not into gambling. I only sort of hopefully make, and as all sensible developers will hopefully make, considered decisions based on a lot of research and analysis. But the bottom line is really, you do not always know. The more knowledge, skill and expertise and a better professional team you've got, the better decisions you will be able to make. But, bottom line is there are a lot of competing things. So that's why property development can be high risk, high reward, because there's just so many unknowns. It's just how it is. Just a quick word to say thank you to our sponsors, LandTech, creators of Land Insight, which is the industry-leading bit of software to help developers find and analyse the potential of real 100% off-market development opportunities. I've been involved in the business for over 10 years now, and if you don't know what it basically does what people like me used to have to do the old-fashioned way, which is hunt around and get together all of the key information that's needed in order to make sensible decisions on the development potential of land. So that's planning, data, market research, lists of all of the various constraints, environment and agency information, you name it, massive long list of all of the stuff that you need in order to find out who owns land, what policy constraints there might be, and exactly what you may or may not be able to do with it. All of the industry leading developers use it, and also the most clued up smaller ones. So if you're not already using it and you want to trial for yourself, have a look in the show notes. You'll find a link to get a free trial, test it for yourself, see what you think, and hopefully get busy finding real off-market development opportunities. So thanks again to our show sponsors, LandTech, and let's get back to the show. Which brings us on to what is probably the last question, which is, what changes does our new government need to make in order to get things through planning more easily? So, obviously a big question, but I'll tell you what I don't think they need to do. So, we all, if you're in any way involved in the industry, will know, well, even if you're not involved in the industry, right, you'll know there's a housing crisis in this country. We haven't been building anywhere near enough houses for many, many, many years. Simple supply and demand. It's one of the reasons things have got increasingly unaffordable. If you're a young person, you're really screwed. You're probably never going to be able to buy anywhere the way things stand at the moment, and in a lot of places you can't even afford to rent somewhere, right? And the problem's even bigger when it comes to proper affordable housing for the people that are most in need, and definitely couldn't buy or rent anything in the open market. So there's a real big problem that needs sorting out. At the moment, it looks like the new government are saying lots of the right things. So let's hope things will change. And I'll tell you what I think some of the ways they need to change are. But what I think doesn't need to happen, the system does not need a wholesale sort of re-looking at and replanning. It really doesn't. Because in actual fact, believe it or not, in my opinion, the UK planning system is largely really good in terms of the system and the legislation and how it all works. It's actually, in my opinion, pretty good. And bearing in mind, obviously I'm a developer that has to struggle with it every day of the week, but I still think the system is actually pretty good. It's not so inflexible that there can't be any negotiation, and it's also not so directive or sort of over controlling that stuff just gets pushed through and it happens even if sort of local people don't want it. So I actually think there's a good balance between what needs to happen in terms of housing supply and where it goes, and what local people and existing residents want. So the system I actually think is really good. It doesn't need managing. It just needs properly resourcing. Of course, there's stuff that could be changed. I could give you a big, long, detailed list of things that could make it a little bit better. But the most important thing, really, is that it's properly resourced. So there are enough planning officers to actually deal with planning applications, in a professional and timely manner. That's probably number one. And the other thing is that it stays relatively stable for long enough for developers and landowners to sort of make decisions. Because again, as I've mentioned many times, property development is high risk, high reward, and there's enough grey areas anyway. When you never know what the planning policy might be next week, next month, next year, it just massively increases the risk. So, because this business is not a quick thing. Deals tend to be longer term. So it just needs to stay settled, stable, fixed enough for long enough for us to make decisions, work out what we're dealing with, and get on with it. Changing it all the time, talking about changing it, proposing things that never come to fruition, just creates massive uncertainty, which keeps everyone stuck. So the simple answer, or the simplest answer, is really the system needs to be left largely as it is, and stop being tinkered with, and properly resourced. That's the things for starters, just so it's stabilised and developers of all sizes can have an element of certainty. Then we can all hopefully work together and talk about how and where some changes can be made slowly in a proper consulted way. And now finally on that, I think it is worth saying, it's important that the policymakers and government consult with the right people, because ultimately, we all know local people, existing residents, they don't want horrible crap development anywhere near where they live, which is absolutely fine and correct. No one should want horrible crap development anywhere. So it goes without saying that we as developers should be doing good stuff, right? We all know that. There's lots of policy in place now that says we should have to do good stuff. We've got design codes in the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, so every local authority's got to have a design code, so that's good, as long as it's not too prescriptive, because at the end of the day, we need to give good designers and excellent architects the opportunity to consider things properly and do things. At the end of the day, they're experts, right? Good architects know what works and what doesn't work. You don't need a book telling you exactly what you have to do, because that won't always work for every single site. But there's lots of good design stuff proposed. We know we should be all working towards nice buildings and good design. But then separately to that, you need to be listening. Government needs to be listening to the people that are at the coalface, trying to actually make stuff happen. And a big part of that is around actual financial viability. So because it's all well and good, putting policies in place, but are they deliverable? Are they implementable? Or are they actually going to just overall stop development? Because, if you ask for too much of the wrong thing in the wrong place and it becomes financially unviable to provide stuff, we'll actually end up with less housing rather than more. And that's happened a lot of times in the past. So I think consulting with and listening honestly to the people that are actually at the coalface trying to get stuff built is an important thing. So it's not all, research by think tanks and there's all sorts of many industry bodies and lobbying for their own sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, you really need to listen to the people at the coalface trying to make things work, who will tell you exactly where the real problems. So that means the house building industry, and in particular smaller house builders that we really need to support and encourage, because they are, in my opinion, number one thing that's going to get more good quality housing built in this country. So I think that's about it. So key things, really, remember, we've got to collaborate, we've got to listen to each other, we've got to work together in an honest and open way, so that we're all, focusing, going in the same direction, rather than fighting each other. We as developers and house builders need to make it easy for the local authority and planners there by giving them all the answers up front and dealing with doing as much of the job as possible for them. But at the same time, of course, they need better training and better resourcing and more people. And that's basically the crux of it, really, in my opinion. So, but of course, if you've got different views or something that you want to add, or further questions for coming episodes, stick them in the comments if you could here. Please also like and subscribe to this channel, because that way we'll hopefully end up getting wider reach. More people will hear about this, more people will get involved in the conversation, and ultimately that will hopefully end up with us all getting more good quality, sustainable, well-designed housing built. And if you're not here watching on YouTube, you might be listening on a podcast or something like that. If you go to Paul Higgs Official on Instagram, you can DM me with your questions there. So that's it. Future episodes, we'll be talking about building, obviously land issues, sustainability, finance issues, planning and design, obviously real key big stuff. So send us in your questions, and hopefully we'll be talking about those soon. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in to Inside Property Development. Please remember to like and subscribe. Do join us every week, where we'll be speaking to house builders, developers, experts, planners, and everyone involved in trying to get more much needed housing created the right way. We'll learn together how we can collaborate rather than fight, and by working together we can all help create better places, spaces and homes, and a much more beautiful world.